Welcome back. So let's focus in on the SABC. It has cancelled its plans to retrench more than 2,000 permanent and freelance employees. Yesterday, the broadcaster also announced that it would not renew the notice of the consultation process between them and organised labour as prescribed in terms of Section 189 of the Labour Relations Act. The SABC has been facing financial difficulties and has not been able to pay all of its creditors. Last year, it warned that it would not be able to pay salaries by February unless it gets a 3 billion rand guarantee from government. So in studio this morning, I'm joined by Aubrey Shabalala. He's the General Secretary of the Communications Worker. Good to see you, Aubrey. Thanks so much for making your way here. From our Pretoria studios, we're also joined by Hannes Dubison. He's the President of the Broadcasting, Electronic Media and Allied Workers Union. I suppose you more commonly know them as BEMAU. Hannes, thank you very, very much as well.
Good morning. Thank you.
Okay, so let us begin firstly with your reaction, Aubrey, when you heard the announcement about the halting of the retrenchments. I mean, talk to me about this. Was it something that you had expected in a way?
Well, we are anticipating for that, but it's news that we welcome. We are happy to hear that. But furthermore, beyond that, the issue that relates to skills audit, it means that the call that we've been making throughout our protest, even in our memorandum, has been heeded too, that we needed a skill audit before we can think of any restructuring.
Okay, Hannes, your response to it?
Well, we thought that this process cannot go ahead. We were concerned that it would have crippled the SABC in particular short before the elections. So, yeah, we are, of course, very happy for SABC employees, their families, the country as a whole, that the SABC has decided to terminate this process.
Yeah. The reality is that the SABC still finds itself in dire financial difficulties. In fact, perhaps we can get a response from you in terms of what happened earlier this week. It was a major talking point, and people were honestly believing that when salaries weren't paid, there was financial difficulties, and it finally had come to, fruition. But it was later then revealed it was a banking glitch. I mean, and that, I imagine, is both of your understandings as well. Hannes, a banking glitch?
Well, what happened was that we've got quite reliable information that the SABC, due to a technical error, paid over not enough money to cover all SABC employees' salaries, and as a result of that, the bank could not release the salaries to other banks. So, we believe there was no malice in this process on the side of either the SABC or on the side of the banks.
Again, however, a worrying sign of the dire financial difficulties that the SABC does find itself in. I mean, Aubrey, can you give us more light into where the SABC is at right now? Yes, it almost feels like by halting the retrenchment process, which is good news, it's kicking the stone down the road that the problem is still going to be there.
Well, absolutely, you're quite right. You'll recall that even the Minister of Communications said for her to assist the SABC, we have to first start with the basics, and that was to take away the retrenchment. Let's focus on the comprehensive turnaround strategy. We'll approach the Treasury so that it can be able to bring funding to SABC. That was initially rejected by the board then. We think now with the sole stakeholder, which is government, with SABC and all relevant stakeholders like ourselves, we'll be able to approach the Treasury in line with rescuing the SABC financially.
Hannes, financially, I mean, we look at the fact that, I heard you speaking yesterday, and one of the questions posed to you is, do you believe that the SABC is overstaffed? And you couldn't answer that question. But I ask that again to you. That is one of the big issues. Are there too many people employed by the SABC?
Yeah, and the short answer is we don't know. There has not been a proper process that has been put on place to really determine that. The information that we received during this consultation process did not show us that the SABC in fact is overstaffed. There's been talk from the SABC side to just look at the figures of the SABC and say that there's too many middle management. We know that that is a historic HR problem, where the system inside the SABC would not make provision for people to proceed in terms of their careers, and that they had to be put on what is called management levels to properly reward them, or the SABC would have lost them to other broadcasters. So we know exactly what is going on the ground. We do not believe that there is too many people. There may be people wrongly placed at this point in time. I think we are lacking in terms of human resources, structures and processes at the SABC, but there is no evidence that has been presented to us, and we do not know if the SABC is really overstaffed or not.
But if we look at the numbers, Aubrey, and I bring you into this question, I mean, how sustainable is it to have a salary bill of 3 billion rand a year on an organization that is struggling the way it is? So 3 billion rand to pay 3,000 employees.
Well, perhaps we must look at the question of the business modeling of SABC. Is it effective? Is it efficient? I think that's one of the areas that must be looked into. And this is correct by looking to the areas of HR. Because for us to conclude on whether the staff is bloated or not, we should be able to look into what is it that the staff is doing at SABC. Is the business model of SABC efficient, like I've said earlier on, in terms of paying those salaries? I understand that it might sound awkward to say that the company that is struggling financially can pay so much bill in terms of salaries, but you'll understand that this is a public broadcaster. Its main mandate is to bring the news, to bring sports and all of those things to the community. And some of the things that it has to do not generate revenue. Yeah. So somehow, it's like asking a school what is the biggest bill of the school. You'll find that it's on salaries, because it goes to teachers as compared to actual production and all of those things. So it is a question that we need to probe, but as well compare what the SABC is required to do.
Hannes, can you go a little deeper into the skills audit? How exactly does that work? And more importantly, how long will it take? I mean, some are saying it should take the better part of a year to actually conduct.
Well, the SABC indicated yesterday that the skills audit will take about 14, that is 4 months.
Okay.
So what should happen is that the SABC should go and evaluate each and every person's job and see if that person is doing what the strategy of the SABC in fact is going to dictate. So this is where we need to start, is to look at the strategy of the SABC. We need then to look at the structure, and then people who sit in that particular structure and how they are positioned and how they are trained. So those are the kind of investigation that needs to be done. There should be this should be a thorough process. It's not a haphazard process, and the SABC has also indicated that they are going to make use of external consultants because we don't believe that there are that skills inside the SABC.
Right, but that's an additional cost. That's even now more of a cost that we're ladening onto the public broadcaster by bringing in external help as well. When we talk about the fact that, you know, there will be the skills audit and see if people are suitable for a position, if not move them, but if they are found to not be suitable for any position, could that result in certain people actually being dismissed from their job?
Well, I don't think that is the sort of end purpose of this process. What should happen, and this is what, as Aubrey has said, this is what we've been calling for right from the beginning, is to say that let's do a proper skills audit. And then if we do have people that are not either properly placed or that's not properly trained, what should then happen is that the SABC should then retrain those people and ensure that they are then properly placed, properly trained. There may be a handful people that may then not be at the end of this skills audit, that may not be properly placed. But at the end of that process, one assume the SABC will do the civil thing and start negotiating with those particular employees to have them exiting the SABC at the end.
Aubrey, obviously looking at the board is a big problem as well here at the SABC. I mean, the pressure that they received, scathing letters, and also we've seen resignations one after the next after the retrenchment process. The minister also very anti the retrenchment. There was a lot of pressure against the SABC to not follow through on this. So, talk to us about the impact of the board, or the lack thereof, actually.
I think lack thereof.
Yeah.
I think the board, it didn't want to interact or engage with all the key stakeholders. That was the first challenge. You'll recall that we've said that we are not opposed completely to the turnaround strategy, but we want to get involved as well and see how best can we protect jobs that are there, and perhaps build a capacity for SABC to even employ more in future by moving into DTT and all of that. So the board have then taken a decision, and I think they've seen human resource or people as part of a package in creating profits of revenue. Because what they've done, they then said, let's cut X numbers of workers, and then that will create some leeway for SABC to have money. But they did not look at what is it that you need to cut, what is it that is needed or not needed at SABC. So that was the first problem of the board. But also, being part of the board that was highly active at SABC as if it was executive, that also created a problem, because the board has to play its fiduciary role as an oversight to the executive. But once you see a board that is actively involved on a daily basis of running of the broadcasting, that creates a problem on its own.
Hannes, one question I need to ask you, and I think I ask this on behalf of freelancers. A lot of people have already lost their jobs, during this process, where I know that the perception, and, we've spoken to management at the SABC, and they say it's a contract and it is their right to renew it or not to renew it, even though some people have been working for many, many years. And during these difficult times, a lot of freelancers' contracts have not been renewed, and they have basically been dismissed from the organization. Contract renewals are coming up now, and the same policy could be put in place, that they say, look, we don't need you anymore, so we're not renewing your contract. What rights do freelancers have in all of this?
Well, in terms of the Labour Relations Act, freelancers can, particularly if they have been employed with the same employer, that's the sole employer, and they've been working like permanent employees. Freelancers do have rights in terms of that. There is a process in the Labour Relations Act where those freelancers can approach the CCMA and get an advisory arbitration award that would then certify them certify them as employees. We really feel for those freelancers, and we think that this is an issue that we have been taken up with the SABC for a long time, hence the decision in 2011 already to convert freelancers that's been working for the SABC 8 hours a day for longer than 2 years, to convert those freelancers and fixed-term contractors into permanent employees, and a number of people have been converted in terms of that process. So we will not dump the freelancers. There are people that is abused at this point in time. Technically, it is correct to say that you've signed a contract. That contract has a starting date, it's had an ending date, and when that ending date arrives, that you are then no longer employed. But the SABC has been employing people on consecutive contracts, as you have said, for 15, 20 years. Yesterday, when I was there at the studio, some people asked me about that. So most certainly, this is something that we will again take up with the SABC. I think the freelancers are part of the mix, part of the Section 189 process, and they should remain part of that particular process.
All right, Hannes, thank you very, very much. Aubrey, I can see you agreeing with everything Hannes is saying in connection with that. Just my final question to you, when do you think that this audit is going to start for the SABC, the skills audit?
Well, in terms of what the SABC said, as soon as possible, we are waiting for them to give us that information now, but also to weigh in on the freelancer issue, is that at SABC, they work 8 hours a day, and like an ordinary worker. So it's it's synonymous to labor brokers, what is happening at SABC. So it's something that we are going to challenge together with Burma, so that we make sure those people are converted into permanent positions.
All right, Aubrey, thank you very, very much. Thanks for being with us. Hannes, thank you very much. Talking to the SABC issue, the fact that the retrenchment process has now been called off But still, SABC financial difficulties facing the organisation. Just a minute past 7, let's get into your news bulletin now.